Okay.
Tell us the story of how you first met Mommy.
I first met your mom in 2002. I was driving around in St. Lucie and Barbados, and I briefly kind of encountered your mom, and I remember the encounter where it didn't seem like I made much of an impression on her. I was a teenager at the time, and so was she, and I was hanging around with other teenagers, and I guess she just kind of thought I was some guy lost in the crowd of young boys that was there. And then an entire summer later in 2003 is when I ran into her again almost by happenstance. I was stopping by the home of the wife of my cousin, and I walked into the house, and there was this beautiful, amazing young lady with grace and the utmost poise. And instantly I thought to myself that I didn't stand a chance with this young lady, so that alone gave me the courage to ask for her phone number. So I said, "Hey, can I have your phone number?" Thinking that I didn't stand a chance in getting it, and I didn't even get a response at that time. And while she was being given a ride home back to her family's house, she inquired about who I was and why I was asking for her phone number. And my cousin's wife took that as an indication that she was interested. And so my cousin's wife instantly called me and said, "Oh, I think Kimberly is interested in you." And from there, me and Kimberly went out on our first date the very next day, and I suppose the rest is history. We had this almost kind of romanticized fairy tale scenario where she went back to St. Lucia and I followed her to St. Lucia, and we kind of lived off the land for a few weeks there, and eventually we got married and had you wonderful guys.
Okay.
That's the short version of a very long and lovely story.
Feel. Okay. Number 2. Tell us how you came up with our name.
Well, your mom wanted a K name for you, Kimberly, Kayla. So she loved Kayla. I wanted to name you Jade. I always liked the name Jade, and I always liked the name Alexis. And because my initials are J-A-B, Jeremy Andre Bab, your uncle's initials are Jab also, J-A-B, Jamie Antonio Bab. And so I wanted to follow that pattern. But your mom wanted to have a K first name, so we settled on Kayla, which is a lovely name. And the compromise there was Jade Alexis Bab. So you still had Bab in there. Instead of it just being Jab, it's now K-Jab. And I always thought that Jade Alexis was a good stage name because I always envisioned that you would be a celebrity or some kind of musician or a person of great fame, and I thought that Jade Alexis sounded like a really cool stage name. With your brother, we completely threw out the JAB theme, and I decided to name him after two of my favorite songwriters, Bob Dylan and Paul Simon. So he's named Jaden, which I always love that name, Jaden. So kind of J for Jeremy and Jaden. And then his middle names are Dylan Simon, Jaden Dylan Simon Bab. And I always joke that this particular child, whose parents are from the Caribbean, are named after Jewish songwriters who were born in 1941. But they are, regardless of culture or background or generation, the two of them are, without argument, the greatest songwriters that have ever existed. And I wanted to have some measure of legacy where Jaden could be a reminder of how important music is to his father.
Okay, question 4.
Did we do number 3?
I mean, no. Question 3. Are there other musicians you think we should learn about?
Well, music has always been quite important to your dad. I mean, when I was much younger, I collected hundreds and hundreds of compact discs,
Yeah, I
CDs.
know.
At the time when I started that collection, I would never have predicted that streaming would have been so popular, and so streaming has essentially made CDs obsolete. But I still like having something tangible in my hand. But with your music is so important to me that I figure there's a lot of things that I would want you guys to know about music, and not just the musicians that I named Jaden after. We're from the Caribbean, so it's important for you to know music of your culture, reggae, soca. A lot of old school calypso songs I think are important to know, followed by some of the greatest songwriters of all time. Jackson Browne, Bruce Springsteen, the Beatles, each and every one of their solo catalogs. I can name music from 1930s onward. It kind of starts off with classical music from centuries before, and then all the way up to Dizzy Gillespie and Duke Ellington, jazz, all the way through the 50s, the birth of rock and roll, Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, all the way to the 60s with the British invasion. So of course Dylan and Simon come into play there. All those bands from England, the Kinks, Eric Clapton, Rod Stewart, and then the 70s, of course, are a huge decade for me. The Rolling Stones, although the Rolling Stones started in the 60s, you have Elton John, you got Rod Stewart, you have all those 60s greats like Aretha Franklin, Tina Turner, Motown in the 60s, all those great 70s bands, 80s with Madonna and Prince and Michael Jackson, and then in the 2000s with all those great boy bands, up to the present day with EDM and all
DNCE.
What's that?
DNCE.
Yeah, all the great. So it's important to know music of your generation so you can keep up to date, and it's important to know music of the past. Anyway, I could bore you all day with talks about music.
Okay, question 4. Where did you go to school?
Well, I went to school in Barbados first at Sheila Primary School, and then I came to America when I was about 9 or 10. Then I went to, I think, PS 152. And then because of some sort of snafu and paperwork, I went to Lafayette High School. And then from Lafayette, I went to the State University at Albany, which is in the capital of New York State. And after I finished college, I thought to myself that I wasn't going to go back to school for a graduate degree, but I ended up working for the Administration for Children's Services, and they
Yes.
while working there, they encouraged me to get a master's in social work from Stony Brook University. And then I subsequently got another master's degree in public administration from Baruch College. There's no need to collect degrees, but I was very fortunate to get scholarships, and I was very fortunate to have a supportive family and the time to actually obtain these degrees. And not that they've been having multiple degrees has rewarded me in any way that one degree or none would have, but I think there's an objective value in education, and there's great importance in learning as much as you can. So that's my story of how I amassed a few degrees. I'm not sure if I'm done yet, but at this point I'm done because I want to spend all my time with you guys. Next question.
How would you want to be remembered?
How would I like to be remembered? As a great dad, I mean, you know, I failed at many things, but so far I think I've succeeded at being a good dad. I like to be remembered as a good son, a good husband, and somebody who's very loving and supportive and generally wants the best for others. I hope that I've made a difference in the world, and that every day that I've encountered somebody, I've brought something special to them. And that's essentially how I'd like to be remembered. Just as somebody who is genuine, kind, and somebody who is willing to go to great lengths to make the world a better place. Thank you.